What's going on, everybody? It's Jay here from Nerd Takes, and today I wanted to give you my take on Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. So, when I sat down to write this review, I started to struggle thinking about where I actually wanted to begin with it. And then soon enough, it hit me that I could actually start right where I left off with my last review of Part 1, because this movie is every bit as bad, if not worse, than the first installment was. The entirety of this Rebel Moon story and film series is a brutally tough watch given how bad it is across the board. It doesn't really feel like a part one and a part two so much as just a movie that seems like it might have been about 8 hours long in reality, then horribly edited down to a 4 hour story, which was then cut in half again and presented as a part one and part two. At this point, I'm just hoping that there's really no other follow ups coming in this series because I don't think that I can sit through another one of these movies. It's so bad that it's not really worth the time it would take to go over all the issues again with great detail because I would literally just be repeating the video I did for part one, as it has all those same issues and probably a few more added onto it. And I really don't want to bore anyone with going over all that again. It's once again a very bland looking movie with bad storytelling, bad acting, next to no character depth or development, lots of cringe dialogue, poorly choreographed action sequences, and enough nonsensical writing and happenings to give Madame Web a run for its money. So instead of going through all that again, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of what stood out as even worse than the first time around. The very first thing that comes to mind is the use of slow motion effects. I am being 100% honest when I say that halfway through this movie, I honestly thought that Snyder might have been giving us some kind of a borderline parody of himself in some sort of way. I kid you not when I say that there's literally scenes of people harvesting grain in slow motion. I just don't understand what he was going for with this. Even the action scenes that have it just come off as laughable given how much they used it in the spots in which they used it. I know it became a bit of a signature part of his style back in the days of 300 and all that, but it's far past the time to ease off on the use of it, if not stop it altogether. And if you thought that the characters might be more developed and intriguing this time around, that maybe you'd get some kind of investment into them, then you unfortunately would have thought wrong. They're all so poorly written that honestly, I struggle to even remember their names, and I literally just watched the movie. They're all just kind of there taking part in what's going on, but they don't really matter to the viewer while you're watching. At least they certainly didn't to me. Now, that's mostly because there's just no emotional investment in them. I just didn't care about any of them as characters, and that's the fault of the writing and the acting, to be honest with you. There's a scene where they're all just kind of sitting around a table, finally giving some sort of insight into their backgrounds and where they came from. And it plays out kind of like a table read for a script, where these actors were just finding out what their character is at the same time that we are. It's really bizarre. When you add that to the bad acting and directing, there's just really nothing to enjoy about any of them. There's a robot character who appears in the first movie who you assume would be fleshed out a bit more in this one character wise, but they literally just out of nowhere cram him into a battle sequence, and that's pretty much it. And they try to have it play out like it's some pivotal moment you should care about, but you end up sitting there wondering where did he just come from and why is this even happening? The action sequences just don't look good. There's fights that are a bit too turn based, and then there's some silly scenes of people standing or walking through immense amounts of blaster fire, totally unscathed and giving very random war cries to one another. It all comes off as just poorly designed and honestly pretty cringe. The story itself is very reminiscent of ones that have come before it. One in particular stands out as maybe the one it was trying to copy. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who may still want to watch this movie, but what I can say is that the movie that I'm thinking of did it far better. I'd actually love to see people guess in the comments what movie that might be, just to see if anybody else picked up on it as well. In a year where the Dune series just pulled off a brilliant part two to wrap up its part one, Rebel Moon really shows just how difficult it is to actually do that. I wouldn't recommend this movie unless you're a massive Snyder fan and you just really want to check it out. And hey, if you end up liking it, then all the power to you. We can just agree to disagree. But for me, this was probably one of the top two worst movies I've seen so far this year. If you want to know a little bit more about what's wrong with it structurally, then feel free to check out my review of part one because, as I said earlier, it suffers from all the same issues as that one, seeing as it seems like this was really just one long movie cut up into two parts. And if I'm being honest, neither one of them was worth the time it takes to watch them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back again with another review soon.